All right, welcome back, chemistry students. We are going to learn how to draw Bohr models. Remember, Bohr models are simply models of atoms, and we're going to use them in order to predict how one element interacts chemically with another element. When we're looking at Bohr models to study the reactivity of these elements, we're going to focus specifically on the valence shell and on the electrons that are found in the valence shell. Those are called the valence electrons. Those are the ones that are involved in chemical bonding. Now, we're not going to talk about chemical bonding today. We are only going to focus on how to draw the models that we are going to use later on in the year to really study chemical bonding. So, here's our slide on how to draw Bohr models, and I'm not going to run through all these with you. You can certainly read these all on your own, but our next slide, the rules for the energy levels, is one that is pretty important. You need to know how to place the electrons properly around the nucleus of an atom. So once you notate the nucleus, then you're going to draw a circle around it. In that on that circle, like on the actual line, you need to put two dots that are going to represent the first two electrons. You cannot even think about drawing a second ring, a second energy level, until you fill the first ring with 2 electrons. All the other rings want 8 electrons, but that very first ring, it can only hold 2. All right, so you've got some space on your sheet for some guided practice, so I'm going to run through a couple of things with you. So in order to draw Bohr models, you first need to determine how many protons you have and how many electrons you have. So let's just start with a simple atom. This is carbon, and let me find a good color. Okay, so we're going to start with carbon first. So our atomic number for carbon is 6, and what that means is that we have 6 protons, and it means that we have 6 electrons. So to start drawing my Bohr model, I'm going to write 6p for 6 protons, and that's going to be the center. That's going to be my nucleus right there. Step number 2, draw my first energy level. So I'm going to draw a circle around my 6p. And now I'm going to add my first 2 of the 6 electrons. 1 and 2. I put 2 in, so if I subtract 2 from 6, that means I have 4 left. In order to accommodate 4, I can't just put them in the same ring. No. I've got to draw another ring here. So I will draw another ring, and now I will place my 4 electrons. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the placement of these electrons is important, not so much right now, but definitely later on in the year. So the way that I think that you should do this is put 1 on top, 1 to the right, 1 to the bottom, 1 to the left. Top, right, bottom, left. And you're going to continue to do that until this ring has 8. If this ring were to have 8 electrons in it and you still had more that you needed, you would have to draw another ring, but we can go through that on another slide. For now, let's look at how many energy levels we have. Remember that the energy levels are the rings around the nucleus. I have 1 and 2, so I have 2 energy levels. And then my next question is, how many valence electrons? Well, let me change the color of my pen here. And the valence shell is the shell, or the energy level, that is the furthest away from my nucleus, and I'm shading it purple here. So what I want to do to answer this question is count the number of electrons that I have in the purple ring. I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So my answer for how many valence electrons I have is 4. And this is the Bohr model for an atom of carbon. Let's try another one. Next, move myself down here. Next, we have sulfur. So once again, figure out how many protons and electrons you have. If we look at the atomic number for sulfur, I have 16 protons and I have 16 electrons. I'm going to draw my 16p where I would have the center of my nucleus, draw my first ring, and add my first 2 electrons. So I'm just going to keep my tally up here. 16 minus 2 is 14, so I still have to draw 14 more electrons in my atom. Remember, my first ring can't hold any more than 2, so I have to draw a second ring. And now I'm going to use my pattern, top side, bottom side, to add 8 more electrons. Top, side, bottom, side, top, side, bottom, side. So there, I have 8 electrons in my second ring. Remember that the second ring can hold a maximum of 8 electrons. Let's see how many more electrons I have to place. 14 minus 8 is 6. I can't just squeeze them in here. I've got to draw another ring. Follow my pattern now to place the last 6 electrons. Top, side, bottom, side, top, side. And I'm done. Now let's answer our 2 questions that we have at the bottom. How many energy levels do we have? All you have to do is count the rings. 1, 2, 3. And how many valence electrons do I have? Look at the outermost shell, at the outer ring, and count the dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And that is the Bohr model for an atom of sulfur. Okay, let's do one more together. This is for an atom of lithium. I have an atomic number of 3, which means I have 3 protons and I have 3 electrons. So let's start by drawing 3p, where I'm going to have the center of my atom, and draw my first ring. How many electrons can go in that first ring? If you thought 2, you would be correct. 1 and 2. Subtract my 2 electrons from 3, and that means I've got 1 more electron to place, but I can't squeeze it in there. No, 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 you can only have 2 in that first ring. So now I've got to draw my second ring, add my electron, and now I'm done. So let's see, how many energy levels do we have? I have 2 rings around that nucleus, so I have 2 energy levels. And how many valence electrons do I have? Well, I've only got 1 dot in this outermost ring, which means that I have only 1 valence electron. All right, so you've got a couple more to practice. So go ahead, pause the video now, and then I will show you the answers. Okay, welcome back. Let's see how you did. Well, in your Bohr model for neon, you should have 10 protons in the center. You should have 2 rings. The first ring should have only 2 electrons, and the second ring should have 8. We have 2 energy levels, 8 valence electrons. And this is your answer for phosphorus. 15 protons in the center, 3 rings, 2 electrons in the first ring, 8 in the second, 5 in the third. We should have 3 energy levels and 5 valence electrons. So I hope that you did okay on that, and if you didn't, make sure that you ask me some questions about that during class. Okay, but that's not the only way that we can designate how many nuclear particles, how many particles there are in the nucleus of an atom. Like I showed you that we can abbreviate an element like this, where we have the name of the element, a dash, and then the mass number. So remember that this number 25, this here is the mass number. And remember that the mass number is equal to the number of protons plus the number of neutrons. So when, let me move myself up, when the element is written like this, we have the mass number. I've given it to you. And you can now figure out how many neutrons there are in the nucleus of that atom. So the mass number is 25, and to figure out how many neutrons I have, I just have to subtract my atomic number. Well, how do I find the atomic number for magnesium? Dun, da, da, da. You have to look here at your periodic table. The atomic number for magnesium is 12. So 25 minus 12 gives me 13. So I have 12 protons, 13 neutrons, and my electrons equal my protons, so I have 12 electrons. Here's how you do this. We're going to put 12p in the center and 13n in the center. Then I'm going to draw my first ring, and I have to place 12 electrons. You're going to do this just like you did for the other drawings. 2 in the first ring. Then draw your second one. Put 8 here. And I have 2 more left. But I have to apologize because I didn't follow my pattern there, but I should have. And you should too. So this is my final drawing for magnesium 25. How many energy levels do I have? 3. And how many valence electrons do I have? 2. All right. Let's do one more together. Here we have carbon-13, so carbon 13. And again, since I have the mass number here, I can figure out not only protons and electrons, but I can also figure out neutrons. So I have 6 protons. And if you're wondering, how did I know that? It's the atomic number on our periodic table. I have 6 electrons, because protons and electrons have to equal. And I have 13 minus 6 neutrons, so that means I have 7 neutrons. I'm going to put my protons and neutrons in the center. Draw my first ring with 2 electrons in it. But I still have 4 electrons that I need to place. So I'm going to draw my second ring. Up, side, bottom, side. And that is my Bohr model for carbon 13. How many energy levels do I have? 2. And how many valence electrons do I have? 4. So the other way that we can write abbreviations for elements is by having the letters off to the side and then having almost like an improper fraction on the left. Remember that the big number on top is the mass number, and that the number that's here on the bottom is the atomic number. Could you just find the atomic number on the periodic table? Absolutely. But oftentimes it's already given to you. So because I have the mass number, I can include neutrons in my Bohr model. So I know that I have 4 protons, My electrons have to equal my protons, so I have 4 of those. And I have 7 minus 4 neutrons, which gives me 3 neutrons. Protons and neutrons are going to go in the middle of my nucleus. Draw my first ring, which has 2 electrons. And since I have a total of 4, I still have 2 more electrons to place. So I'm going to draw a second ring and then add my last 2 electrons. How many energy levels do I have? 2. And how many valence electrons do I have? Also 2. Okay, you've got 2 more practice problems to do on your own, so pause the video, do those, and then I'll show you the answers. Okay, welcome back. And these are your answers for the last 2 practice problems on your note sheet. So for oxygen 18, we have 8 protons, 8 electrons, and 10 neutrons. So put your 8 protons and your 10 neutrons in the center of the atom and draw your first ring. 2 electrons in that ring, and then after you draw those first 2 electrons, 8 minus 2 is 6, which means that you have 6 more to place, and they are going to go in that second ring. How many energy levels do I have? Just 2, because I've got 2 circles around that nucleus. And then how many valence electrons do I have? Well, I have 6 dots in my outermost shell, so I have 6. And then here is your answer for calcium-42. This was a pretty big atom, the biggest one we've done yet today. 20 protons, 20 electrons, and then 22 neutrons. And remember that I found the number of neutrons by subtracting 42 and 20. So I had to subtract these 2 numbers in order to get my 22. And then I had to place my electrons. It required 4 different rings. So only 2 electrons go in the first ring, 8 in the second, 8 in the third, and then I had 2 more electrons to accommodate, so they had to go in another ring that I drew. I have 4 rings, that's 4 energy levels, and in that outermost shell, here are my valence electrons, 1 and 2. All right, chemistry kids, thank you very much for watching. I hope you learned a lot, and we'll see how you did with all of this in class. Have a good day. Bye.